All right. Well, you guys didn't think I could just totally stop my commentaries, right? Of course, we finished the commentaries on the entire series, but we'd be remiss if we didn't do a commentary on Knight Rider 2000. And it's interesting, this is the first time that I've really watched it with an eye for the real details. And believe it or not, I actually found a number of cool things that I think you'll find too, and I guarantee some of them are things you have never seen before. But before we get started, I needed to give a shout out to my buddy Adam Kidwell. He runs a business called Promethean Digital, and he upscaled this original Knight Rider 2000 footage to 4K, and it looks amazing. Now, you guys have probably noticed anytime you've watched this movie how the picture quality doesn't quite match the original series. And that's because Knight Rider 2000 was filmed on videotape, I'm pretty sure, and not 35 millimeter like the original series. And because of that, the picture is grainy and just does not look good. In fact, I don't know if you'll be able to see it in this comparison, but even if you look at this is a direct pull from the original source, and you can see how even the letters, the Knight Rider 2000 letters, are fuzzy around the edges, and there's just no clarity there. And you look at what Adam did with his upscaling, and you can actually zoom in and you can see texture on the background, and you can see this highlighting around the letters. I mean, it's really amazing. So as we go through our commentary on Knight Rider 2000, pay close attention to just how crisp and how clean these screen grabs look, because it's really amazing. All right, with that said, let's dig into Knight Rider 2000.
Tonight, an NBC world premiere event. For 4 years, they rode together. A man who did not exist. And a car unlike any other. Now, in the year 2000, they're together again.
Trust me, buddy.
It could be extremely dangerous.
The future is here, and it's in big trouble.
They betrayed me.
Let's do something about that.
Your first adventure of the 21st century is coming tonight. And now, Knight Rider 2000, the motion picture.
Mixed together, one hero.
Come back for the next 30 days until we cement our contract.
One awesome talking car.
Is that you, Michael?
Yeah.
You look like crap.
Well, so do you, pal.
And some cops gone bad.
There's a strong possibility your own police force is implicated.
And you get the action-adventure of a lifetime. Get ready for David Hasselhoff in Knight Rider 2000. Next on USA.
Production number 82137. It was originally aired on May 19th of 1991 on NBC, and it was rerun on NBC on September 1st of 1991. It was written by Rob Hedden and directed by Alan J. Levy. So Alan, if you weren't aware, is married to Sandra Curry. Now, who's Sandra Curry? Well, she played Francesca Morgan in Not a Drop to Drink. So there's a nice little connection to the original series right off the bat. So a little bit about the origins of this movie before we dig in. Hasselhoff once stated, the biggest questions I usually was asked was, why are you so tall and why aren't there more episodes of Knight Rider? I kept coming back and telling my managers and agents we really ought to do some more, and they would put calls into the powers that be who would say there was no interest. I never let it die, though, and I finally ran into Brandon Tartikoff at the mall, who was he was a former NBC executive. I told him that I had Universal Studios on the ropes and that I thought the timing was really good to bring Knight Rider back as a TV movie. His wife turned to him and said, "Oh, Brandon, that's a great idea." Then Brandon turned to me and said, "That's a great idea." The phone rang 3 or 4 days later, and Universal said, "Let's do it." They hired a writer who wrote a script, and we were about 10 days away from starting production. Then they suddenly threw away the script, and the whole thing died. So, the script that they threw away was vastly different than the final product you see here. In fact, we have a copy of the original Knight Rider 2000 draft dated July 2nd, 1990. Couple things to note. First of all, this draft was not written by Rob Hedden, but rather a guy named Michael Sloan. And if you look at this producer up here, does that sound familiar? Bernadette Joyce, one of the producers from the original show. Now, reading through this script, it's clear to see that this would have been a far, far superior movie than the one we actually got. It still features Michael and Devon. It features the Foundation for Law and Government, not the Knight Foundation. It features KITT as his original Trans Am, at least at the start. In the story, the Foundation has moved out of the building we saw in the original series, the Arden Villa mansion, and they moved into this, they call it a glass monolith, which actually is similar to the prison we see in the actual aired movie. Devon has returned to Flag after many years away. He was in Moscow building a new facility. He returns to find that everything has changed. The person he left in charge there mothballed KITT. He's building a new defense vehicle codenamed the K-72. Devon meets up with his daughter, Kyle Miles, a 25-year-old daughter, and they're planning on taking this K-72 out to a test range, and one of the things they're going to do is they're going to blow up the original KITT with this, the original Trans Am. So Devon tries to work with Kyle to bring KITT back, otherwise he's going to be destroyed. But Kyle tells her father that KITT's sluggish, he has burnt out circuits from this terrible mission that went wrong years ago, 15 years prior. And that was the mission. Whatever happened there went so bad that Michael left the Foundation, and KITT was in bad shape and never fixed. So they decide they bring KITT back. They bring Michael back. Devon still dies in this version, except he goes out in a blaze of glory. He's in a gunfight. Michael does upgrade KITT to a new car at the end, and the movie ends with Michael and KITT riding off into the sunset. Tell me that doesn't sound so much more exciting than what we actually got. All right, so right in the opening credits, we see this scene. Now, what are we looking at here? We are looking at, no, they did not get a Trans Am, go back out to El Mirage Desert and film anything for this movie. This was, I think when we talked to Alan Levy, he called it B-roll negative film. This is unused footage from the original filming of the intro for the original series. This scene here was filmed way back in 1982, and it's just an angle that they never used. They decided to use it here for this movie. That's all this is. All right, so after the credits, we open at the Quayton State Prison. This whole movie, by the way, was filmed in San Antonio, not Los Angeles. So this was in the Quayton State Prison, February 19th, 2000, the far future of 2000. And it's interesting to see, because obviously we passed the year 2000, 23 years ago. And it's interesting to see what they thought would be the future, because this was filmed in 1991, so this is only 9 years in the future. So you look at some of the technology in here, and you think, wow, they had some lofty goals there. But this Quayton State Prison building is actually the Century Building in San Antonio, still stands today. And if we go down this path a little bit, this is the door we see Michael and Sean come out of a couple times, right there. And actually, that scene, if we go back here, this scene, you can see this road here, and this is actually up on a hill. So technically, if we go up here and scroll around, this is exactly, like that sign would have been like right here. Obviously, it's covered by trees now, but that's pretty much exactly where they filmed that scene. All right, so we come inside the prison, and clearly this is a matte painting right? You can tell that this is all a painting, everything except this one area right here. So we've got a little CGI work going on, something we never saw in the original series. And I like this guy right here. I don't know if that's a CGI person or not, but they're walking real slowly kind of into the painting there. And so right off the bat, you see that this movie is going to have a totally different tone than the original series. The original series took place in modern day, and for the most part, the only thing, dropped from fantasy into reality was KITT, right? But here we are, this whole world is different. We have cryogenic chambers that take place. This is what a prison looks like 9 years in the future, in the year 2000. So clearly they were going for more of a sci-fi element than the original series. All right, and so we've got Thomas J. Watts. So what can we read here, thanks to this nice upscale? So entered into the prison June 7th, 1999, I think. And then I think it says no additional. In June 7th, that's the day I had the semi-trailer delivered here. Interesting. So entered then record, armed robbery, burglary, assault with something, and then medical, no allergies, and then it says something else you can't read. All right, so again, taking a detour or a departure from the original series, Don Peake was not given the chance to record the music for this. Instead, it was Jan Hammer. And Jan famously did the music for Miami Vice. So I actually kind of like the music. It's different, but it's somewhat catchy. And in the background of this scene here, which I never really noticed till I was really digging into this. In a few minutes, Sean here is going to tackle this guy and there's going to be an altercation. But in the background here, you can actually see Sean and Kurt just standing there having a nice cordial chat with someone there as this scene unfolds. All right, so Glenn Larson does get a credit here. He was not involved, to my knowledge, in this movie at all, but his contract stipulated that he still had to receive, credit on any future Knight Rider productions, and that's what we're looking at here. All right, so in this city of the future, and by the way, they never really mention the setting of this movie. They just, they say it's the city of the future, but they don't say what city it is. They don't specifically say they're in San Antonio, but this is the Tower of Americas, which still stands today right here in San Antonio. And we'll see a couple other, I'll show you here if we turn around. This is the location where Sean has the gunfight with Tommy Watts here in a little bit. So we'll go over that here in a second. All right, so let's talk a minute about Susan Norman, who played Sean McCormick here. Obviously, this was a pilot type of movie, a backdoor pilot. They were hoping that this would turn into either a new series or a series of movies of the week. Even though it was so highly rated, it just never happened. Susan only had a few credits to her name, both before and after. She really kind of disappeared from the acting gig. She had a recurring role on the series Parenthood around the same time that this was filmed, but then she kind of disappeared. She reappeared she opened up her own website, SusanNorman.com, and you can check that out. And it appears she does a lot of voiceover work these days. She does audiobooks and other things like that. So she's still kind of in the industry a little bit. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about Jan Hammer. It's actually pronounced Jan Hammer. I know you want to say Jan Hammer or other thing. It's actually Jan Hammer. Even I'm screwing that up. Anyways, he was hired to do the score for the movie by a guy named Fred Lyle, who knew of his work when he was an associate producer on Miami Vice. At the time, Fred Lyle was the vice president of music for Universal Television. So Jan at the time said they wanted a hit piece of music that was different from anything that was currently on TV, and I went for it. Jan also went on to say Universal and NBC had both hoped it would turn into a series, so the theme was important to them. Jan came up with the idea for the theme and sketched it out in about 20 minutes. The entire score for the movie had about a 2-week turnaround time from start to finish. So there's a little background on the music in this movie. All right, so here's Marla Hedges, played by Megan Butler. Another actress that really didn't do too much in Hollywood after this. I did a little bit of digging on her, and it looks like she became a psychic and did psychic readings. And I don't know if she's still doing that. Seems to have kind of dropped off the internet. But I think that's the path that Megan took after her time in Hollywood was over. All right, we got Eugene Clark playing Kurt Miller. Interestingly, we see the scene where Kurt is getting ready to talk into his watch. So clearly the technology from Flag back in the 80s has allowed Kurt and other police officers and probably other users in the world to be able to talk to their watches and communicate. Interestingly enough, we now have that ability now, right, with our smartwatches. Of course, we didn't have that ability in the year 2000, so this was still a little bit ahead of its time, but it's tech that is directly related to the original series. All right, so in this far-flung future of the year 2000, handguns are outlawed, so all the police use what's called an ultrasound here. Just a fancy-looking gun that shoots like a stun whatever beam at them and disables them. Looks like she also has, look at her watch, it does look like a bigger, more chunkier type of comlink or smartwatch. Yeah, so she had just shot Tommy Watts. So if you look in the background here, you see all these ramps and the stone walls, and yeah, that's all part of this Tower of Americas that all took place right here. Still all there today. All right, so the first time we see Devon and Russ Maddock, here we are. More CGI work. Looks like they were trying to mimic the El Mirage Desert here with the Knight 4000 driving at them. It's interesting that this movie doesn't even acknowledge the Foundation for Law and Government. It's all the Knight Foundation, which we did hear about in the original series. There were times when it was almost like there was the Knight Foundation and Flag was an offshoot of the Knight Foundation. Anytime there were cases that couldn't be handled through normal legal means, they went through Flag. But in this movie, it seems like Flag has been dissolved, and now they just have the Knight Foundation. All right, here's Lou Beatty Jr., Mayor Abbey, who, spoiler alert, turns out to be a bad guy, along with half of the other guest cast in this episode, or in this movie. He's still an actor today. In fact, I was just watching some bizarre channel at some point, during the day, and he came on one of those like healthcare commercials. He just played one of those, that generic grandfather in a medical commercial or whatever, but it was definitely him. And I thought, well, he's still working after all these years. All right, so here's our first close-up look at Edward Mulhare and Carmen Argenziano as Russ Maddock and Devon Miles. Interesting, bizarre story. So, obviously this is Hollywood, out west. Obviously it was filmed in San Antonio, but Hollywood, right? And about 20 years ago, I was interviewing for a job at a somewhat local business, right? And on the East Coast. And somehow the topic came up. It was a job that involved writing, so I brought a copy of my book, and I showed it to the lady that was interviewing me, and she said, "Oh, I think it was her cousin." He said, "My cousin was in Knight Rider," and I said, "Who's your cousin?" She said, "Carmen Argenziano." I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah," and she pulled out a picture of her with him. And I thought, well, that's bizarre, and so I ended up getting hired there, and it was like a few weeks later or whatnot, she gave me a signed picture of him made out to me, which is just really, really cool. And he ended up, we ended up having a chat with him about the movie. So really bizarre connection there. I believe he recently passed away, I think in 2019. So regarding Edward Mulhare, so obviously he's back as Devon for the first time since 1986. This was 5 years later. We asked Alan Levy about him specifically, and he said he was a very sweet, nice man. He had problems with the dialogue at his age, so he had to be patient. He was open to his character dying as he was not interested in doing a weekly series. Edward was very thankful for the work. He and David had a great relationship. And not totally related to this, but we also asked Alan if he knew why Patricia McPherson and Peter Paris were not asked back, and he simply said the network wanted to take the series in a different direction and focus it on Michael, Devon, and Kit. So there you go. All right, so we're about to see Michael for the first time. He lives alone in a cabin with his 57 Chevy. Interestingly enough, way back in Forget-Me-Not in season 1, doesn't he talk about cruising in his Chevy to like burger joints or something like that? So probably not intentional that they put him in a Chevy, but still a neat tie-in to the original series. And this is a neat scene. There are some really neat, poignant scenes, and this is one of them where they see each other for the first time and are reunited. All right, so they're talking at the table inside Michael's cabin, and all I can notice is their glasses of iced tea. So if you look here, there's a little bit of ice in that one, right? So, or I'm sorry, if you look here, I mean, there is a little bit of ice, but they're talking, and Michael has his hands folded, and the glass is on the table, and Devon's holding the glass. And then it instantly cuts mid-sentence, and now Hasselhoff is holding the glass in his one hand. And there's really a lot of his ice has melted in his glass. Then you switch scenes, and now you can see he's got a ton of ice there. And back here, Devon's got some ice. Now he has a ton of ice. So whatever. Anyways, that's what you get whenever you ask for episode commentaries. So now we move to the warehouse, and we can see this crate. For some reason, it has 3 of the Night logos on the side. I'm not sure why. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else on this crate that would be of interest. Packed by Momart. Oh, there's another logo there too. How about that? All right, so then we pan up, and we start to see Kit's original dashboard. And we can see a fender here off on the left-hand side. We see a round steering wheel, not sure where that came from, an exhaust pipe, looks like a speedometer gauge. And if you look closely at this dash, especially with this upscale, you can actually see the PAMP switches, the tack board. So what is this? What is this? Is this an original? Yes and no. It kind of is. The dash shell is not original, I believe. I think this was cast by J. Orberg. J. Orberg built the Knight 4000. The electronics in this dash are original. They are the original electronics from the season 3 and 4 Hero car. Let's take a closer look. All right, so in this behind-the-scenes shot, you can actually see that dashboard a little bit better. And you can see a lot of the original ribbon cables, which we know is how they wired these up. But there you can see the original gauges there. And when we move to a different shot, you can actually see they were testing how they would light up. So how do we know these are from the original Season 3 4 Hero car? Well, a couple ways. First, I can tell by some of the damage to the boards and the fact that we have pictures of the season 3 and 4 Hero car after the show ended and all the gauges were removed, but the dash shell remained. And the season 3 and 4 Hero car was the only car that had gauges where this signal bar was green. On the insert dash, the one they used for close-ups, it was red. So all of these little details tell us that this is from the Hero car. Now, what happened to this after the show ended? No one knows. Or no one's talking. I'm hoping they're still out there somewhere, but as of now, we have no idea where these pieces are. All right, so going back here, like I said, there's a weird speedometer gauge there that doesn't really fit. We've got this round steering wheel. We've got this exhaust pipe. None of this other stuff fits. This is a Trans Am fender here off to the side, so at least they got that part right. And this warehouse is very reminiscent of the warehouse where Michael first meets Kit back in the Knight Rider pilot, don't you think? And this is a great scene where Devon just kind of loses it with Maddox, where he says, "How dare you dismantle that car without first discussing it with me?" All right, so because Bonnie is absent, Michael has apparently become a whiz at electronics and artificial intelligence and all that stuff. We see him trying to repair some of Kit's circuitry here, and then, of course, later in the episode, he actually integrates Kit into the Knight 4000 body. So he's taken up... maybe all those years around Bonnie rubbed off on him. All right, so we see this close-up of Kit coming back to life. So there's a few things to unpack here. First of all, what are we looking at? Let's talk the scanner bar first. So I don't think originally I thought this was an original scanner bar, but I just don't think it is. There's too many things that look different about it. First of all, the circuitry powering this is not the original relay-based circuitry. This is more akin to like the J.C. Whitney scanners that J.C. Whitney used to sell back in the day. Obviously upgraded a little bit to handle bigger bulbs, but the scan pattern, the trailing, is just not there. And also the lenses have this pattern in them, which the originals never did. And the bar itself, I don't know of any times when the lens was held on with brackets in the middle. They were always at either end. So I'm not sure that this is an original bar. Obviously, this eye is something we never saw in the original series. And we'll talk about the voice box here next. So the voice box was built, I think that was built in-house by Jay Orberg. In fact, he actually placed a test clip that he filmed back in the 90s of this voice box working. So let's take a quick look at that, then we'll come back to this.
1, 2. Hello. Hello. I'm the Night Rider.
Take 2.
Hello. I'm the Night Industry 2000. KITT for short. Being reincarnated by J. Orberg Star Cars in Hollywood. Hello.
Oh, okay. It rolls. We have speed. Quiet on the set. Action.
Hello. I'm the Night Industry 2000. KITT for short. Being reincarnated by J. Orberg Star Cars in Hollywood. And being sent freight collect to the film location in Texas. Have fun, guys.
Okay, so one of the things that bothers me the most about this voice box is throughout this entire movie, anytime you see it, it's actually upside down. So this is supposed to be his normal auto pursuit lights, but as you see it here and as it's mounted in the Chevy later on, it's actually upside down. And I think it's meant to look kind of pieced together like this. I mean, in story, we're assuming that Michael just kind of whipped this together. He soldered all this together to get it working. This wasn't necessarily the actual one that came out of KITT's dash. I don't know. But if they were trying to achieve like this homemade look, they definitely did. All right, so we have Commissioner Daniels coming in right after Sean was shot. Now, I get that, again, that this is the future, but why does every medical personnel not have a mask on, and why was she allowed in, without a mask on or allowed in at all? So you think with this gunshot wound, he should be masked up, he should be masked up, she shouldn't even be allowed in there, but what do I know? I'm a historian, not a doctor. All right, so we have the Knight Foundation headquarters here. This is actually the Ken's 5 news station headquarters. Here's what it actually looks like today. Pretty much exactly the same, just a little bit of signage change there. All right, so we have the FN, fiber optic information network. So interestingly enough, fiber optic, right? There's fiber lines that power internet or give us internet these days. So I guess this was something, that they accurately predicted in the future. President Quayle, not so much. They didn't really get that one right. All right, so we've got Maddox's office. Nothing earth-shattering here. He's got a rocket. He's got some other prototype vehicles. And as we'll see a little bit closer later on in the movie, we've got the Knight 4000 model on his desk. So KITT's now been integrated into Michael's 57 Chevy. You'd think Michael wouldn't want to do that since he cares about the original paint later. You wouldn't think he'd, hack up his Chevy for KITT, but maybe that was okay. And then, of course, we see the three of them riding together. This is a far cry from Michael driving KITT in the pilot with Devon in the passenger seat. And here's KITT's new dash, all kind of powered up. It even got these lights wrong, and some of them aren't lighting up. I mean, obviously, if this was upside down, normal would be green, pursuit would be red. So it's just a mismatch of inaccuracies. and his futuristic dash is now limited to 3 picture frames here. So KITT mistakenly thinks that James Doohan, who we'll see in a minute, is this Todd Mullen, the Barbarian, and with a criminal record here dating back to 1998. He stuns him, and we see this weird scene with Scotty. I'm not even sure why this was needed in the movie. But originally it was supposed to be Brian Bosworth, not James Doohan, who was the former linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. He was supposed to be in here. I'm not sure what happened, why they changed it. But then, of course, we see KITT as a Chevy self-driving. So KITT can still self-drive as a Chevy. We've now confirmed that. And we see Maddox here saying he was Scotty in the original series in all 10 movies. Again, something else the Knight Rider 2000 movie got wrong. Scotty, of course, did not do 10 Star Trek movies. So Sean is now at the Knight Foundation, and here you can kind of see that model. It's not in focus, but that's clearly the Knight 4000 model. Probably the AMT plastic model kit that was released around this same time. All right, so this is our first time really seeing the Knight 4000. Again, this was built by Jay Orberg and his crew back then. It was built on the shell of a Dodge Stealth. So the donor car is a Dodge Stealth. He built 2 full-size cars, 2 full running cars. One was a hero car, one was a stunt car. Both of those still exist. He also built a boat car, which we'll see later whenever KITT's on the water in the Riverwalk in San Antonio. And he built an insert car, which was just like a buck that was used for a lot of the interior scenes. So the boat car is currently in a museum in Florida, in the Deezerland Museum. There's a picture of it today. All fiberglass body, fiberglass wheels, and everything. And here's the insert car. We own this insert car, which I'm not sure we've ever really talked too much about. But this is actually in our collection. It's in storage, and we haven't done anything with it, but this particular car, or half car, is in our collection. So maybe one day we'll do a video dedicated just to this half insert car. Do you guys want to see that? All right, so then we get this great exchange between KITT and the Knight 4000. Interestingly, KITT is obviously the Knight Industries 2000, but the Knight 4000 doesn't really have necessarily a name. It's not KIFT. People call it KIFT, and it drives me crazy. They never say KIFT in here. In the original series, the Trans Am was the Knight 2000, and KITT, the Knight Industries 2000, was the CPU, the computer inside of the Knight 2000. Here we have the Knight 4000, but they never mention what the computer inside is called. Of course, it doesn't matter because that's going to be replaced with KITT's AI by the end of the movie. Interestingly enough, though, that they built this car with the scanner opening, yet there's no scanner until KITT takes over this body. All right, so we have Michael and Sean talking in KITT in it's actually the Botanical Gardens in San Antonio. So it looks so nice here. I think part of it was because of the sunset. Maybe they put a filter on it, because here's what it actually looks like, which in my opinion looks a little run down, right? I mean, you can see here the nice paver stones underneath. The concrete looks nice and clean. The grass is green. Here we've got some dead grass. The pavers need cleaned. The concrete's filthy, so not quite as nice as it was back in 91. All right, so Michael pulls over, pretends that KITT's disabled. But in the scene, you actually see that the Chevy was originally yellow, and then they painted it red. Painted it blue. They had, I think, 3 full-size Chevys and then a buck, an insert Chevy as well. So they had a stunt car. They had the engineless one that goes off into the ocean, and then they had the hero one here. All right, another thing that the movie accurately predicted is touchscreens, right? So we see these scenes, and of course this is a CRT that they're pretending to touch, but nonetheless, we have touchscreens now. We didn't really have them in the year 2000, but we have them now. This might be my favorite Easter egg in the entire movie. So during this scene where he's downloading all these criminal files, you see the picture and then you see some criminal information. But in reality, these are pieces of the Knight Rider 2000 call sheets that are used for the production. And if you look here, it says Mayor Abbey, Matic. I can't read that. Matic again. Wall TV, whatever. And you look here, it says point of view camera, road, deer, things like that. And then it scrolls, and we have another piece of the call sheet with some times on it, maybe, or some time stamps. And then this says something in North. This looks like maybe the hotel the cast and crew were staying at with their names. And then a little bit more of their names. So really, really cool Easter egg there that I bet no one has ever noticed. In fact, I never noticed it until I was preparing for this commentary. All right, so then we have Matic and Devon taking the initial ride in the Knight 4000, kind of reminiscent of Michael and Devon's first ride in KITT back in the pilot. Although Devon looks a little less impressed and a little more scared than whenever Michael was driving KITT back in '82. So we get this great point of view shot from the back seat of the Knight 4000 with Matic and Devon in the car. This is that insert car. Anytime you see the inside like this, it is that half insert car we just talked about. The main thing I wanted to point out here is something very interesting that you see in these shots, but you don't see actually close up. So once KITT is no more, and even after no more in the Chevy, and even after he's transplanted into the Knight 4000, his voice box. So originally, they were going to incorporate KITT's original voice box into this car. And in fact, if you look down here, you can see a piece of it. Right here, the shifter is hiding most of the voice box there. But that's what that is. That's supposed to be KITT's original voice box. Now, in the final movie, they don't use this. They just have KITT's voice up here as, like wavy lines. But at least that was the plan. It was good intentions, right? Yeah, here's what I'm talking about. This is the voice box that replaced the other voice box, the original voice box, which, this doesn't even hold a candle to KITT's original voice box. And what do we see here? We have buttons for virtual reality, infrared, thermograph, thermal expander, something auxiliary. All right, so we're moving along, and this is the chase scene between KITT and the cops, and we see the Chevy here, and then we see the Chevy, unfortunately, plow into the side of a cop car, and then plow into some boxes. Now, I want to put something into perspective for you that may make you feel really old. Because, you see them destroying like classic 57 Chevys, and you're like, why? Why are they doing that? Think of this. At the time of filming, the 57 Chevy was 34 years old. Today, the 1982 Trans Am is 41 years old. So it's almost like a movie shot today destroying a Trans Am. Well, I guess that's, that would be hard to see because they're classics too. But, back then the Chevys weren't as, I guess, classic as they are today. I mean, they were always classic, but they weren't as coveted, I guess, as they are today. So that's possibly one of the reasons why they used the 57 Chevy. Because in the original script, that one I showed you at the beginning, Michael didn't drive a 57 Chevy. He drove a Volvo, a black Volvo station wagon. So I suppose this is an upgrade from that. But it is hard to see the Chevy being destroyed. And then, of course, they drive off of the dock into the water. This is a totally different Chevy. This one was originally red. And for this scene, they actually pulled the engine out and just pushed the car to speed and then had it go off the dock. The guy driving, or in the driver's seat during the scene, is Alan Levy, the director. It's his son. So we asked him about this, and he said they didn't want to ruin a pristine 57 Chevy, so the crew found a duplicate one that was all rusted out, and they bought it for $500. My son drove the car off the dock. He was equipped with an oxygen tank. We bought the Chevy, we sent it to an overnight paint shop and had them pound out the dents and do a $100 paint job on it. Since the car didn't have an engine, we pushed the car to speed and off the dock. There you go. So one of the lingering questions is, how did Michael and Sean get out of KITT at the bottom of the ocean? All the windows are rolled up, and from watching, science type shows and Mythbusters, I don't think you can easily open the doors underwater. In fact, I think it might be impossible because of the pressure exerted on the door. So they must have broken a window to crawl out of there. I don't know. All right, so Devon is about to die. They're reading his RNA. Again, something else that can't really be done in real life, but they're doing it now, reading memories and having him display on screen. So the first thing we see in Devon's memory is the scene. This is part of the epilogue scene at the very end of a lot of the first season episodes, where you see KITT driving away in the desert. It's interesting that Devon has the memory of this because technically he wasn't around when this was happening. This was just Michael and KITT driving out in the desert, yet he has this memory. But he should have the memory of this. We have Will Tonight, Richard Basehart, saying his one man can make a difference, and this was all legit. And then we have this scene, which is from Deadly Maneuvers, when Michael was playing the Atari racing game. Again, Devon would not have been there for that. And we see Devon taking his last breath. Sad that Devon is no more. But Edward Mulhare, at this point, he only had 6 more years to live. He knew he wasn't going to be doing any more television shows. In fact, I think he wanted to be killed off. So he got his wish. And then finally, there's this one last memory of them toasting to the future, no matter who it may take us up against or where. All right, so there's another little problem with these scenes at Devon's funeral. All right, so we have Maddox and Harold Abbey talking. Okay, so they're talking outside the funeral. Here we've got Michael in the background here watching the people pour out. We don't know if he actually attended the funeral or if he was just staying back. Then we come in here and there's a discussion with Maddox and Sean about how everyone still assumes that they drowned and they're at the bottom of the ocean. But why would Michael be at the funeral if he wanted to maintain that they were dead, to get the upper hand? I don't know. Something else that sadly has not come to pass in the years since, oil is not less than 10 cents a barrel, unfortunately. And then we have, this is probably one of the highlights of the movie, this really cool scene. They have the music playing. Michael's doing his best Bonnie, getting KITT transferred over to the Night 4000. Power it up, you see the scanner going. This was a cool scene. Too bad it was only like 30 seconds long. So right after that, they're kind of waiting for the police officers and outside the warehouse, and KITT mentions Sean's perfume and says he's equipped with an aromanometer now. But what everyone has forgotten, apparently, is that KITT had an aromanometer in the original series. In Redemption of a Champion, it was called his olfactory scan, but he was able to sense the perfume in the house before it exploded. So he's already had this before, so this shouldn't be a new sensation to him. Oh, receiving a fax. How futuristic. Although, I guess technically in the year 2000, faxes were still more of a thing. Certainly more than they are today. And the new Knight 4000 still has a monitor that, they can talk to home base with. Although, it's odd that Maddox would need to use a headset to hear them. But maybe he did that on purpose just so no one could overhear his conversation in his private office. I don't know. Seems like a step backward from the days of Devon just wandering around the office talking to them. But that appears to be the norm, because if we look at Commissioner Ruth Daniels' desk, she's got a video phone sitting here too, a very bulky one. All right, another little continuity slip. So Michael prints off these release orders and scratches out, he prints out 2 copies, scratches out the name, puts Ruth Daniels on one and Harold Abbey on the other. But actually, these are not identical copies, outside of what he scratched off down here. Because look, just look at this line. So we've got this scribble here, and look at the spacing right here and the way the scribble is. And then you look at Harold Abbey's, and you can see it's on the side, and the scribble's different. And if I were to guess, yeah, even the signature, the Governor John Sackman, is different. So, it was definitely not the same. I think the text above is all the same, but everything else is different. All right, so there's a nice high-quality 4K look at KITT's new voice box, which just sucks, doesn't it? Moving on. All right, more high-tech from Maddox. Look at that cell phone. I mean, cell phones were, even in the year, I guess in 91, they were still big like that, but by the year 2000, they were much smaller. So even in 1991, in this reunion movie, you can see filming still brings out some people, right? Look at all these people out here outside of Taco Land, I think, watching the filming of this movie. And yes, it is Taco Land. There it is right there. Anyways, all the cars are Berettas, Chevy Berettas, except magically, whenever they're going to blow one up, one turns to this old, what is this, an old Chrysler, I think, that explodes. Yeah. Definitely had some product placement here with the Chevys. We got the Chevy van here, and what was that, a Lumina van? I thought it was related to the Lumina, but then you got all the Berettas here. Then for some reason Maddox and Daniels is in a Ford Taurus. And another feature brought over from the original series is KITT's thermodynamic generator, where he can remotely pop tires. So we saw that back in season 4 in The Wrong Crowd, when KITT blew up the tires of the bike gang. All right, so here they are on the Riverwalk. This is, again, that insert car. In reality, they didn't put the insert car in the water. They actually just had a boat that they were driving, and they set a camera on it, and they were getting the point of view shots, and then they inserted that footage on the screen of this insert car. So on the Riverwalk, they built that fiberglass boat car, and they were having a very hard time getting it to float. They said it would nosedive and fell into the Riverwalk, so they had to raise it back up and fix that. But we actually have a photo of it sinking. So here it is, sinking in the Riverwalk and completely submerged. All right, so the finale of this episode, the climax, takes place at the Riverwalk shops, right, by the Riverwalk. So here's a screenshot from the movie, and you can see it's pretty much exactly the same. It's even still a Marriott hotel here, which you can see it was back then as well. And KITT comes through the Riverwalk again. Look at all of the people up top, all around, watching this. I guess not every day you see a car on the Riverwalk. There's a car on the water. And then KITT pulls in and docks right here, which is right in this area, right where that boat is where they docked. And it was all filmed from up here. So they had the camera up there filming KITT coming in and docking right here. And another carryover from the series, Microjam. They don't call it Microjam, but KITT locks their doors, scrambles their communications. That's Microjam. So I like these scenes, how Michael is, we're living in a world where handguns are banned. And so Michael's walking around, he's got his ultrasound out, clearly just out in the open. No one is batting an eye to it. And then Sean's walking through the food court carrying a handgun. No one seems to care. So then after the shooting, Michael comes running through. This is actually Matt McComb, Hasselhoff's stunt double, as you can see here. Clearly not Hasselhoff himself, but Matt McComb was Hasselhoff's stunt double towards the end of Knight Rider, and he was a stunt double in Baywatch as well. And then you've got this scene again where you've got Sean beating up a cop, and all these people are watching, and no one's thinking, hey, we need to stop that woman who's beating up a cop. And finally, the movie's almost over, but we get the return of Michael's comlink here, talking to KITT. All right, another great shot of not Hasselhoff. This is Matt McComb doing his, what's that kick called? Where you jump and a jump kick. I don't know, jump, flip, kick, whatever. He did that a number of times in Knight Rider, too. I think that was kind of his signature move. All right, so we've reached the end of the movie. Michael is finally wearing a leather jacket again, not his black leather one, a brown one, but I suppose we'll take it. And he's handing off KITT to Sean. Here we see the Knight 4000 driving by itself for the first and only time in the series. And you can see there's no one in there. This is the stunt car. This is one of only the few scenes in the entire movie where this car was used. It's interesting to think that, they spent thousands and thousands of dollars built both these cars, and the screen time was really minimal if you think about it for these cars. All right, and finally, during the credits, Matt McComb actually gets credit. He never got credit in Knight Rider. There he is getting credit. You know who else gets credit? Dave Cass. Any of you guys know who Dave Cass is? He played Alex Webster in the season 1 episode Not a Drop to Drink, right here, the guy in the center. That's Dave Cass. He was not only an actor, but he was also a stuntman, and he did some work in this movie, which is kind of cool. And not to be outdone, re-recording mixer Tom Huth. Is there a relation? I don't know. But it's something I noticed when I first saw this movie in 1991. I thought, that's pretty cool. Okay, guys, there is your breakdown of Knight Rider 2000. Was there some things in here that maybe you didn't know or didn't realize? I bet you there were. What'd you think of this commentary? Should we do more? Should we do Team Knight Rider? Should we do Knight Rider 2008? Sorry, we are never doing Knight Rider 2010. I'm not even sure I've seen it the whole way through. But, I might just surprise you in the future and we'll start Team Knight Rider. I don't know. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Knight Rider Historians is where it's at. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.